Next Kina Ches Ad Chuk Shomayim. This Kina speaks about the first of the 5 sorrows that happened on Tisha B'Av, the Chiyah of Dor HaMidbar, Evchen Olel Mileil Umidbar Mimidbar, Chet HaMaraglim. That is the first Gehenna that exists because of that Chet. What was the Chet HaMaraglim? Klal Yisrael made a terrible mistake. That's what Chazal described as Atzas Hador Hazeh, Atzas Maraglim. Doesn't mean the plot to malign Eretz Yisrael. It means a hashkafa that they had. In the Midbar, everything happened b'derech nes. They ate, they drank, everything happened b'nisim and hashomayim. But they knew that when they would come into Eretz Yisrael for various reasons, everything would happen b'derech hateva. Things would happen naturally. And they assumed that derech hateva means that now they're in control. Natural means we're in control. That the Rabbanu Shalom relinquished his control over the world and he put it into our hands, and we have to make things happen naturally. The Vilna Gaon in his Sefer Emunah V'Hashgacha explains that that's not the case. But it doesn't make a difference what kind of hashgacha there is, whether it's Nisim Geluyim or Nisim Nistorim or Hester Panim. It's all from our standpoint, how we see it. But the truth is that the Rebbeinu Shalom runs the world in every situation. There's no difference whether he's sending mon or a person cultivates a field and gets bread from that. It's all Maaseh Hashem. Except sometimes we have to see it directly, and sometimes it's hidden from us, and sometimes we see it partially. And all of that is for our sake, that we should be able to have Bechira. But the truth is that everything is Yad Hashem. Explained that was the mistake that Yosef HaTzadik made too. The Melio says that no one should ever think that nature means cause and effect. You do this and you affect the result. It's not true. You put in your hishtadlus. You just create the condition. It's a prerequisite. And then the Rebbeinu Shalom does his thing. You plant a seed, you don't cause it to grow. You did your hishtadlus. Now the Rebbeinu Shalom will cause it to grow. You have to make your hishtadlus. But there's no cause and effect between the hishtadlus and the result. The result is the Rebbeinu Shalom's result. You just fulfill the condition. Yosef HaTzadik was punished 2 extra years in prison because he told the Saramashkim to remember him. Everybody asks, what was wrong? You have to make hishtadlus. He's in prison. This is a reasonable way of getting out by having the Saramashkim who he helped has ear of Paro. Remember me to Paro. What was the problem? Why 2 years? Some say because he was too extra. Kiyim, what's it called? The Maskir v'Haskireni of Paro. So that's the case. He could have had 2 weeks. Why 2 years? And also one of them was okay. The second one was the problem. So you should only have 1 extra. Once I explained, the idea is the following. Yosef made it look as if he was orchestrating how he's going to get out of prison. Not that he was Yotzei Atanai. He fulfilled the prerequisite. He told the Saramashkin and finished. But he was orchestrating how it's going to work. I'm reminding you, and you remember to me to Paro, and it'll all work out fine. And Yosef gave the impression that he was the cause. So the Rebbeinu Shalom said, I'm going to teach you a lesson. You're going to get out of prison exactly as you thought. The Chor, if the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted to tell him that he did the wrong kind of hishtadlus or whatever, then he shouldn't have gotten out of prison from the Saramashkim. Saramashkim should have died, and he should have got out of prison in a completely different way, and the Rebbeinu Shalom told him, he has nothing to do with you. Instead, he got out exactly as he thought. The Saramashkim told Paro, got him out of prison. So what kind of lesson is he being taught? Just the opposite. The Chazal say that a person can remember something to act upon it for a year. After that, you put it in the back of your mind, Gabi Eidus and Eidim. So the Rebbeinu Shalom said, you're going to get out of prison exactly as you thought, but it's going to be clear it didn't come from you. How so? The Saramashkin can remember you for a year to do something about it. If at the end of the year he told Paro could remember for another year. After 2 years, it was impossible that it came from Yosef. You're going to come out exactly as you thought, but I'm going to be the cause, not you. That was a mistake that Yosef made. Therefore, it had to be Dafka after 2 years. And that was the same Chet HaMeraglin. They felt that the Rebbeinu Shalom abdicated his control over the world, put it into their hands, and therefore they have to do it b'derech hateva. And if it can't be done b'derech hateva, it can't be done. And that's why they said, Chozaku mimenu. These nations are stronger even than the Rebbeinu Shalom. What, they were fools? They thought that with their bows and arrows and spears, they were stronger than the Rebbeinu Shalom. But no, but the Rebbeinu Shalom's ratzon was it should happen naturally. So he tied his hands. He's not going to help them. Because if it can't be done naturally, it can't be done. That was their mistake. But the emes was, they should have gone to Eretz Yisrael and seen that they made a mistake. That it's going to happen naturally, and we can't do it. So that means that naturally doesn't mean you do it. It means the Rebbeinu Shalom does it, and you make it look natural. You have to go through your hishtadlus. That's all. Same Rebbeinu Shalom who's making and running the world, whether it's Nisim or it's Teva, it's all the same thing. And that was the Bechiyah Shel Chinam. Bechiyah Shel Chinam, they felt that the Rebbeinu Shalom abandoned them. He gave up on them. And they felt he hated them. And they weren't going to be able to do it on their own. Sinas Hashem Nosson. And they thought if they couldn't do it, it couldn't be done. That's the Bechiyah Shel Chinam. To cry where you feel that you are the Arbeiter, you are the one in control. And you're not the one in control. The Rebbeinu Shalom is the one in control. So a story of a boy who was orphaned, adopted by a family, grew up and found out that he was really an orphan. His parents were only adopted parents. Bothered him very much. And he had a very, very difficult life. And then all of a sudden, one Elul, his life took a turn for the better. And his Rebbeim were amazed what affected him. Not only that, but he got engaged and married. He went to Chutz La'aretz to raise money so he could be able to set up his home. And everybody thought he was going to be terribly a failure. He was not a fundraiser and not easy to collect money in Chutz La'aretz, especially for personal things. And he was very successful. So one of his Rebbeim asked him, how were you so successful? What's your secret? He said, you remember that Elul that churned my life around? He said, when I said the David Hashem Ori, it says there, Ki Ovi v'imi azavuni v'Hashem yasfeni. And I realized it's true. Enochanami, my father and mother left me. They died. And I was adopted. And I grew up with adopted parents, very fine parents, but they're not my parents. And I always thought that somehow I was given the raw end of the deal. But I realize now that not, just the opposite. If Avi v'imi azavuni, then Hashem yasveni, then the Rebbeinu Shalom's in control, and He'll take over. And He is my real parent. So I can depend on Him. I don't have anybody to think I can depend on them to fool myself. I know that I can depend on the Rebbeinu Shalom. So from that time on, that's all I do is depend on the Rebbeinu Shalom. They're always there for me. That's how a person has to feel. Even with an Avo'ein, with all the things that we think that cause our success in this world, but it's not. The Rebbeinu Shalom is behind all of that. And that's what the lesson of the Bechiyah Shel Chinam, the Gzeira of the Meraglim has to teach us. Another story, I saw a doctor, family had a child that had some kind of mysterious disease until they found out what was the cause. They finally had to go to a doctor who was an expert, the expert on this disease, and he told them that the doctor said, "I'm going to cure your little boy. It's a delicate procedure, but you're fortunate in that you have come to one of the only surgeons in the world who is experienced in this area. I wouldn't trust it to anyone else in Israel, frankly, but I have looked over the x-rays and tests, and I'm certain that this can be done. Go to my secretary before you leave, and she will schedule the operation." So the father said to the doctor, "Thank you, doctor. With Hashem's help, everything should go just as you say." The doctor became enraged. "Hashem should help? Why are you getting God involved in this? I'm the one in control, not God." The father said, "Please take back what you just said," demanded the rabbi. "It won't do my son or you any good for you to talk in such a haughty manner." The doctor pounded on the desk and refused to recant what he said. "I'm the one in control here. I'm the one in control here. Go find God back home in Bnei Brak. Here I'm in control." A few days later, the man gets a call from this doctor, very apologetic. He said, "I want to tell you that I learned my lesson, and I'm not in control, and I hope that the Ribono Shel Olam helps me make this operation." He said, "What happened?" He had to give a presentation before a bunch of doctors on his expertise, and he had the whole presentation ready, and he started to give the presentation. In the middle, his stomach started to churn, and he couldn't hold himself in, and had run off the stage to go into the bathroom because he couldn't control himself. And he realized then that the Ribono Shel Olam taught him a lesson, that he wasn't even in control of his own bodily functions, let alone control of who he heals and who he doesn't heal. The doctor learned from the fact, maybe that's why we make an Asher Yotzar, because it reminds us who's in control. We can't even control our own bodily functions. The Ribono Shel Olam controls our bodies, the Ribono Shel Olam controls our lives. We have to make our ishtadlus, but never to think that we're the ones that are in control. The Brisker Rav, when the communists took over Brisk, and they were giving up houses, any Russian soldier or officer who wanted to occupy a house, they threw out the occupants and they took over the house. And the Brisker Rav's family were afraid that they would take over their house. They had a nice house there. The Brisker Rav said, "Look, we are not in control over here. The Ribono Shel Olam is in control. Ein od milvado. You have that feeling, and I guarantee you nothing will happen. And if you don't have that feeling, nothing we can do can guarantee anything." In the end, they stayed in that home. Nobody ever, Russian officers came, looked at it, left, never bothered to take the house. Finally, when they had to leave Brisk, the week after that, the house was taken over. You have, Chaim Volozhiner says, if a person really has Emunah that ain't od milvado, there's nothing that causes anything in this world, then nobody can do anything to you. Because you understand and you really believe, not just say it, that the Ribono Shel Olam is the one who runs this world. He's the one who's in control. Rabbi Cheskel Avramsky, when he was in Siberia, a labor camp, so they took away his warm clothing. He suffered from freezing weather there in Siberia. They made him run barefoot in the snow. He turned to the Ribono Shel Olam. He said, "Ribono Shel Olam, Chazal say, Hakol bidei shamayim chutz mitzinim pachim." Everything's in the hands of the Ribono Shel Olam, except a person can make himself sick by exposing himself to the cold or to heat. He said, "Here, I see that that's not even in my control. The Soviets have taken away that control, and they have taken away the ability for me to protect myself from the cold or to protect myself from the heat. So now everything's in your control, so you take care." And with that thought in mind, he survived Siberia. We don't have to go through Siberia, you don't have to go through the communists, and don't go through the Nazis to be able to understand that the Rebbeinu Shalom is in control of the world. And if we understand that, and we're misakin that Bechiyah Shel Chinam, and we have the Bechiyah Shel Mamish that we spoke about. The Bechiyah Shel Mamish is the Bechiyah that we are like children, that if we cry, the Rebbeinu Shalom will take care. It's not that we're in control and that we cry because we feel abandoned, but just the opposite. If we cry enough, the Rebbeinu Shalom will do his part. And Remaisa, he will save us from having to sit on the ground and experience this Gehenna. Then we will have been misaken at least that first aspect of the Gehenna of Tisha B'Av, the Gehenna of Bechiyah Shel Chinam, of not understanding and believing that the Rebbeinu Shalom controls everything in this world, and our part is only to deserve to have that control. It's one last Maisa, my Rosh HaYeshiva, Reb Chaim Stein Zatzal, survived also in Siberia with Nissen. Once they were on a train, Hanukkah time, and he was very mitzvah that they weren't going to be able to mekayim the mitzvah of Ner Hanukkah. Somebody came up with an idea that they should tear from their clothing wicks, and they should go to the place on the train where the oil sometimes drips out from the train motor, and collect that oil, and then we'll have something to light Hanukkah licht. They did that, and then they went to light it, and it didn't light. For some reason, that wasn't the oil. They couldn't get this oil to light. They couldn't get the wicks to light. So Reb Chaim turned to his chaver, and he said, we did everything. We made our ishtadlus. We did everything we can do. Now it's up to the Rebbeinu Shalom. There's nothing more we can do. Let the Rebbeinu Shalom take care. And within an hour, somebody came onto the train, some Russian peasant, selling candles. Anybody want to buy a candle? They bought a candle, they divided it into 8 parts, so they had of Hanukkah, and they're convinced, Reb Chaim was convinced. The Gifter used to say, Reb Chaim said maybe it was Eliyahu Novi that came on the throne. The Gifter used to say it's Vali Eliyahu Novi that came. But when you realize that with all the tachbulos that you can do, you're not in control, and you leave it into the hands of the Rebbeinu Shalom, then the Rebbeinu Shalom says, if you need me, then I'll be there. And that's what it says. If we realize that we have nothing to depend on, says the Mashgiach from Mir, the Biruchim, all the terrible things that happen before Mashiach will come, the last thing is Ein lanu li'ishoyin ela l'avinu shebashamayim. When we come to the realization that we have nothing to rely on, nothing, not chokhmah, not mishpat, not emes, nothing, except the Rebbeinu Shalom, then the Rebbeinu Shalom will kick in. If we think we have other things and the Rebbeinu Shalom's fine, then depend on those other things. As long as you think you have other things to depend on them. Once you come to the realization that all those other things are only hishtadlus, they're only a prerequisite, but they're not the cause, then I will step in and take care, and then we'll see, Taka, that all of this Gehenna will be corrected. The V'yaskol Tzedek Meir of Yom.